Welcome to this explainer. We're going to jump right in today because we are undertaking a true forensic analysis of the upcoming 2026 UK elections. And look, we're completely bypassing the usual political theater, the daily spin, and the noisy headlines. Instead, we're digging straight into the hard, structural, and psychological data. We really want to understand not just who might win a given seat, but whether the system itself is actually structurally sound. Now, you've probably seen this viral claim floating around online. The idea that Britain's economic struggles are purely down to a leadership deficit, pointing fingers at the resumes of recent prime ministers. Well, utilizing advanced multi-agent simulations, specifically the Tarko intelligence models, which pull from literally millions of data points, we're going to unpack why Britain's crisis goes so much deeper than any single politician's background. It's a fascinating structural issue. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the real structural collapse, move into expected political fragmentation, explore the emotional voter and the shift to moral clarity, examine the governability crisis, and wrap up with the golden triangle solution. Starting with part 1, the real structural collapse, looking way beyond that leadership myth we just talked about. The data here reveals a literal demographic time bomb. For the very first time in the 2025-26 fiscal year, welfare spending hit an astonishing £333.7 billion. That actually overtakes income tax revenue. And this isn't some discretionary policy choice made by a specific leader. This is largely driven by state pension obligations locked in by things like the triple lock, alongside a rapidly aging population. Our dependency ratio is climbing to 31.2%. Honestly, no prime minister can just snap their fingers and reverse the aging of a population with a standard 5-year mandate. And compounding that massive demographic pressure are 4 severe, deeply entrenched economic crises. First, we have an accelerating brain drain. We saw 252,000 British nationals pack up and leave in just 1 year. We're also facing an investment desert. Our capital investment is the absolute lowest in the G7. Then there's the productivity gap, sitting at a staggering 28% cumulative lag behind the US since 2007. And finally, the housing trap. A massive 73% of bank lending is locked up in residential mortgages. That is capital that should be funding factory automation, new tech, and R&D, but it's literally trapped in bricks and mortar. This is a profound systems problem.
Which brings us to part 2, expected political fragmentation, or what we are calling the NOC reality.
Okay, this number is absolutely crucial to understand. 63.22%. According to the Tarko AI-assisted model, which, by the way, ran over 10 million iterations at the ward level to figure this out, this is the central estimate for the percentage of English councils that will end up with no overall control, or NOC, after the 2026 elections. Over 63% of councils are mathematically projected to have no single party in charge. So fragmentation isn't just some fringe worst-case scenario anymore, it is the expected outcome. And this fragmentation is happening everywhere. Looking across the devolved regions, the projections show massive, systemic fragmentation probabilities. The model predicts an unbelievable 94.1% probability of no overall control in the Welsh Senedd, an upper bound of 74.2% for local England, and 68.4% for Holyrood in Scotland. What we are witnessing here is the architecture of a quiet but massive structural constitutional shift entirely away from the binary Westminster model we're all used to. Part 3, the emotional voter and the amygdala effect. This is the real catalyst for this rapid change. It begs a massive question, doesn't it? Why are voters suddenly abandoning these traditional political loyalties that in many cases their families have held for generations? Well, the research makes it super clear. It's not just about local bin collections or minor tax adjustments anymore. Voters are reacting to an incredibly potent mix of profound domestic economic inequality and deeply distressing global events. People are processing a tremendous, almost unprecedented amount of external stress right now. To really understand this, neuroscientists point straight to the amygdala. Think of it as the brain's early warning alarm system. When voters are facing constant streams of highly polarizing online content, serious cost of living fears, or severe distress over international conflicts, like what's happening in Gaza, that amygdala just lights up. It is constantly detecting threat and unfairness. As a result, voters start processing politics through a highly emotional lens of worry, anger, and wounded dignity. It actually pushes the slower, purely logical, and reflective thinking straight into the background. Moving to part 4, from loyalty to moral clarity, how voter priorities are fundamentally shifting. We are right in the middle of a stark transition between two very different paradigms. In the old paradigm, voters generally rewarded basic administrative competence and compromise, basically just keeping the lights on. But in this new paradigm, driven by all that structural strain and those intense emotional catalysts, voters have completely lost patience with business as usual. Instead, they are actively rewarding political voices that project unwavering moral clarity, absolute stances, and a definitive, undeniable break from the traditional establishment parties.
And the Tarkle report highlights something absolutely vital here. We have to view this neutrally. This isn't some grand mass manipulation or bad faith acting. It is a perfectly natural, healthy democratic reaction to a bunch of intersecting local and global traumas. People are simply letting their genuine, completely valid feelings about domestic hardship and distant suffering shape how they cast their vote. That is democracy functioning exactly as it's designed to.
Part 5, the governability crisis. Let's look at the specific stress nodes and local pressure points. When these emotional catalysts smash into the structural economic reality, you get highly localized governability crises. The simulation models actually identify specific stress nodes. Take a look at Birmingham, Sunderland, and Manchester. In these areas, the compounding pressures of severe income inequality mixed with intense concern over global events heavily suppress the traditional incumbent votes. Even just a tiny local shift in these high-stress environments drives up the probability of a hung council significantly. It's exactly where economic frustration meets moral urgency.
So you might be wondering, what actually happens the day after the election? If the majority of councils do drift into no overall control, they're facing 3 incredibly severe operational risks. Step 1, decision-making gridlock. Nobody has a working majority to easily pass budgets. Step 2, severe disruption to essential services that, let's be honest, are already stretched to the breaking point. And step 3, a rapid erosion of public trust, because local government starts to look like it's stuck in constant petty partisan conflict instead of actually fixing the potholes or funding the care homes.
Finally, Part 6, the Golden Triangle solution. How do we actually stabilize a fragmented council? To prevent total administrative collapse in this new reality, the Tarko Group suggests what they call the Golden Triangle stabilization model. This is essentially a structured framework where 3 main institutional actors, central government, independent oversight bodies, and key service providers, step in together to form a safety net. Basically, when local political coalitions become way too fragile to operate on their own, this triangle provides the foundational, nonpartisan support needed to just keep the lights on and the essential services running. Applying this stabilization means really committing to 3 things. We need incredibly clear, strict frameworks for how cross-party arrangements are supposed to work. We must implement ironclad safeguards to protect those essential services. And crucially, we need brutally honest public communication. Voters absolutely have to understand the practical, real-world trade-offs that come with fragmented control. This isn't about overriding the democratic will at all. It's just about making sure that healthy, vibrant democratic pluralism doesn't accidentally result in uncollected trash and unfunded social care. Ultimately, what this entire explainer reveals is a profound tectonic shift in the UK's political landscape. The 2026 elections aren't just your traditional horse race of who wins the most seats. The true, lingering question we're left with is this. After all the votes are finally counted, will the real contest actually be between political parties, or will it be a battle between permanent fragmentation and the system's very ability to govern itself? It's a structural and psychological fracturing that's going to test the absolute limits of British democracy. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Let that question sink in.